Everyone knows the story of Rome, the legions, the Colosseum, the empire that forged the Western world. Its story is written in stone and history books. But that story has a missing chapter, a ghost that haunts its very foundations. Before Rome was an empire, before it was even a republic, another power ruled the hills of Italy. A vibrant, sophisticated people who laughed, loved, and feasted in cities of light. While the Romans were still living in mud huts, they were the Etruscans. And then they vanished. History tells us they were simply absorbed, faded away, a natural casualty of Rome's glorious rise. But what if it wasn't that simple? What if it wasn't a fading, but an erasure? A systematic, deliberate act of making a whole civilization disappear from memory. This is not just a forgotten history. This is a cold case. And tonight, we are the detectives. Our crime scene is 2,000 years old, and our evidence is buried under the soil of Tuscany, waiting to tell its story. The story of the world Rome tried to erase. The victim's file. Every investigation begins with the same question. Who is the victim? Before we can understand why they vanished, we must first understand who they were. And let's be clear, these were not simple tribesmen living in the wild. For centuries, before the first brick of the Colosseum was ever laid, the Etruscans were the true masters of Italy. They were engineers, the great sewer of Rome, the Cloaca Maxima, the very system that allowed the city to grow, is believed to have been built by them. They taught the early Romans how to drain swamps, how to build with arches, how to turn a collection of huts into a city. They were artisans of incredible skill. Their tombs are filled with some of the most intricate gold jewelry ever found in the ancient world. They were masters of bronze, and they imported the finest Greek vases, not just to copy, but because they had a deep appreciation for beauty and luxury. They were a rich, powerful, and deeply cultured society. But the most remarkable piece of evidence, the detail that truly sets them apart from their neighbors, was their view on women. In a world dominated by the patriarchal societies of Greece and Rome, where women were often segregated and hidden from public life, Etruscan women were different. They kept their own names. They could own property independently, and most shockingly to the Greeks and Romans, they attended public banquets. They drank wine, they conversed, and they reclined at the table, right alongside the men. This wasn't just a tribe. This was a civilization with a startlingly modern soul. Sophisticated, wealthy, progressive, a true powerhouse of the ancient Mediterranean, which only makes the central mystery of our case even deeper. Where did these brilliant, enigmatic people come from? The untranslatable clue. Where did these brilliant, enigmatic people come from? For any other ancient culture, the answer would lie in the simplest of clues: their words, their language. But with the Etruscans, the clue itself is the mystery. Around them, the ancient world of Italy spoke in a familiar rhythm. The ancestors of Latin, of Oscan, of Umbrian, all were part of one great linguistic family. But the Etruscans, they spoke a language that belonged to no one else. It was an island in a sea of related tongues, a complete anomaly. And here is where the case gets truly frustrating for us, the detectives. It's not that we lack evidence. We have over 13,000 Etruscan inscriptions. They left their words carved in stone, on mirrors, on pottery. The problem is, we can read them, but we cannot truly understand them. We know their alphabet. They borrowed it from the Greeks. We can sound out the words, but the vast majority of these thousands of texts are short, repetitive, and funerary. They tell us a person's name, their mother's name, their father's name, and how old they were when they died. Imagine finding a library filled with thousands of books, but every single book is just a phone book. That is the frustration of the Etruscan language. It's like finding a victim's diary, only to discover that it's written almost entirely in code. We can read the letters, we know the alphabet, but we don't know the grammar, the syntax, the soul of the language. Their literature, their histories, their prayers, all of it is gone, lost, or destroyed. This language, this untranslatable clue, holds the key to their origins, to their beliefs, to their entire world. But it refuses to give up its secrets easily. So if their words have become a locked room, where else can we look for evidence? We must go to the one place the Etruscans left wide open for us to see. The one place they poured all of their art, their beliefs, and their identity into. The world of their dead. Evidence from the afterlife. We must go to the one place the Etruscans left wide open for us to see. The world of their dead. They are called necropolies, cities of the dead. Vast landscapes in the heart of Tuscany, dotted with thousands of tombs, some buried deep in the earth, others carved to look like houses. These are not just graveyards, they are time capsules. You step out of the bright Italian sun into the cool, silent dark of a tomb that has been sealed for millennia. And as your eyes adjust, your flashlight beam hits the wall. You expect to find images of sorrow, of judgment, of somber, terrifying gods, but instead, you find life. The walls explode with color, vibrant frescoes that have outlasted empires. You see men and women dressed in fine, colorful linens, feasting together on couches. Musicians are playing the lyre and the double flute, their painted fingers seeming to move. Dancers leap with an energy that feels alive, even after 2,500 years. Dolphins jump from a painted sea on the ceiling above you. This is not a tomb. It's a party, frozen in time. And in the center of the room lies the sarcophagus, the final resting place. But the figures on the lid are not grim or stiff or sleeping. They are awake. They are alive. A husband and wife, reclining together as if at that very same banquet. They are smiling, a strange, archaic, knowing smile. Their arms are outstretched, as if offering you a glass of wine. They are looking directly at you, the detective, as if they have been waiting 2,000 years to tell their story. So what is the testimony of these silent witnesses? What does this evidence from the afterlife tell us? It tells us that the Etruscans were a people who embraced life with a passion. They loved music, dance, feasts, and companionship. They faced death not as a grim ending, but perhaps as the beginning of another eternal banquet. They show us a civilization at the absolute peak of its confidence and joy, which forces us, as detectives, to ask the most important question of all. What could possibly go wrong? What shadow was beginning to fall over this world of light and laughter? To find that out, we must turn our attention to their neighbors, the quiet, ambitious, and increasingly powerful people living just down the river Tiber. It's time to investigate our prime suspect. The prime suspect. Every cold case has a prime suspect, a person or a power with the motive, the means, and the opportunity to commit the crime. For the disappearance of the Etruscans, there is only one name that truly fits the profile. A civilization whose ambition was matched only by its ruthlessness, Rome. But in the beginning, They were not enemies. Far from it. In the early days, Rome was just a collection of villages on the river Tiber. A poor neighbor looking up with envy at the wealthy, sophisticated Etruscan cities to the north. And like any good student, Rome learned from its master. They learned Etruscan engineering to build their temples and drain their swamps. They adopted Etruscan religious rituals, learning to read the will of the gods in lightning strikes and the flight of birds. They even took the Etruscan symbols of power, like the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe, which would one day become a symbol of Roman authority itself. Rome was the ambitious apprentice, watching its master's every move, learning every trick, every secret. But an apprentice does not stay an apprentice forever. Rome grew. It became organized. It became strong. It became hungry. Suddenly, the rich Etruscan city-states, wealthy but often divided, looked less like powerful neighbors to be admired, and more like obstacles, ripe for the taking. The motive was now clear: total domination of the Italian peninsula. What followed was not a single, decisive battle. It was a slow, brutal, grinding conquest that lasted for over 100 years. A war fought not just for territory, but for total subjugation. The 10-year siege of the great Etruscan city of Veii was a sign of things to come. When its walls finally fell, the city was sacked, its people enslaved or scattered. Its very name began to fade from memory. One by one, the other cities followed. But as our investigation shows, Rome didn't just want to defeat the Etruscans on the battlefield. That wasn't enough. To secure their own legacy, to become the only great power in Italy's story, they needed to ensure their great rival was not just conquered, but forgotten. And that required a different kind of war. A war against memory itself. The suppression of evidence. How do you fight a war against memory? You don't just tear down walls. You burn the libraries. You silence the storytellers. You make an entire culture disappear. This was Rome's final solution for the Etruscan problem. And our investigation has uncovered 3 key pieces of evidence. Evidence A: the lost literature. The Etruscans had books. We know this for a fact, because Roman writers themselves mention them. They speak of Etruscan histories, religious texts, even plays. A rich body of literature from a sophisticated people. And yet, today, not a single Etruscan book survives. Not one line of poetry. Not one page of history. Not one word. Think about that. An entire civilization's literature gone. Books don't simply vanish. They are either allowed to decay through neglect, or they are actively destroyed. Given Rome's efficiency, which do you think is more likely? Evidence B: cultural plagiarism. The second step in erasing a people is to steal their greatest achievements and claim them as your own. The gladiatorial games, that quintessentially Roman spectacle of blood and sand? Most historians now believe it began as a solemn Etruscan funerary ritual. The Roman arch, the very symbol of their engineering genius, perfected and widely used by the Etruscans centuries earlier. Their gods, their rituals, their symbols of power, all were absorbed, renamed, and woven so seamlessly into Roman culture that their true origins were forgotten. It was a slow, methodical, cultural conquest. Rome became a museum of Etruscan ideas, with all the labels rewritten in Latin. Evidence C: the propaganda machine. The final, and perhaps most effective step, is to control the narrative. Roman historians like Livy wrote the definitive history of early Italy. the version of the story we have read for 2,000 years. And in their telling, the Etruscans are often portrayed as decadent, lazy, superstitious, and cruel. They were cast as the corrupt old kings, the villains that the virtuous, heroic Romans had to overthrow to establish their republic. It's a convenient story for a rising empire built on the ruins of its neighbor. Destroy their books, steal their ideas, slander their name. For centuries, this was a perfect crime. The victim was gone, and the suspect had written all the history books. But a case is never truly cold, as long as there is still evidence to be found. And in the modern age, new detectives have arrived on the scene, armed with new tools that can see through the lies of history itself. Cracking the case. For centuries, this looked like a perfect crime. The victim was gone, and the suspect had written all the history books. But a case is never truly cold, as long as there is still evidence left to find. And in the modern age, new detectives have arrived on the scene armed with new tools that can see through the lies of history itself. The first new detective is in the laboratory. Its tool is not a magnifying glass, but a DNA sequencer. For 2,000 years, the central question has been, where did the Etruscans come from? The ancient Greek historian Herodotus claimed they were immigrants from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. And for decades, that was the accepted story. But recent large-scale genetic studies analyzing DNA extracted from the ancient bones of the Etruscans themselves have told a different story, a more surprising story. The DNA evidence is clear. The Etruscans did not arrive from the East. Their genetic profile is overwhelmingly local, indigenous to the Italian peninsula, stretching back for thousands of years. They were not foreigners. They were a unique, homegrown flower in the garden of ancient Italy, which makes their strange, isolated language even more mysterious. The second new detective is back in the field, armed with ground-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, and advanced chemical analysis of pottery and metals. We are no longer just looking at tombs. We are finding the outlines of their lost cities. We are mapping their vast trade networks that stretched across the Mediterranean. We are learning not just how they died, but how they truly lived, how they worked, farmed, and celebrated. And what about the code, the untranslatable clue? Even there we are making breakthroughs. The discovery of bilingual tablets with the same text in both Etruscan and a known language act as our Rosetta Stones. Computational linguistics and AI are finding patterns in the grammar that humans missed for centuries. While we still can't read their poetry, we are slowly, painfully cracking the code. Each new word we decipher is a voice speaking to us from across the millennia. So with this new evidence, the cold case is suddenly hot again. We now know who they were. We have a good idea of where they came from, and we know what was done to them. All that's left is to deliver the final verdict, to understand the true and most surprising legacy of the civilization Rome tried to erase. The verdict. So, what is the final verdict in the case of the vanished Etruscans? Was it a perfect crime? Was Rome successful in erasing its rival from history? On the surface, the answer appears to be yes. Their language is silent. Their books are ash. Their name is a footnote. The suspect, Rome, went on to rule the world. But our investigation has revealed a deeper truth, a more Ironic truth. You cannot truly erase a people when you have built your own house with their bricks. Every time a Roman engineer built a soaring arch, he was using an Etruscan blueprint. Every time a Roman general marched behind the fasces as a symbol of his authority, he was carrying an Etruscan symbol of power. Every time a Roman priest looked to the heavens to interpret the will of the gods, he was performing an Etruscan ritual. And every time the Roman masses cheered at the bloody spectacle of gladiators, they were watching the ghost of an Etruscan tradition. Rome thought it was burying its rival, but in reality, it was absorbing its soul. The Etruscan legacy didn't truly die. It simply put on a toga, learned to speak Latin, and for a time, it renamed itself Rome. And this, perhaps, is the final lesson from our 2,000-year-old cold case. History is never a simple story of victor and vanquished. It is a complex, messy story of ghosts and echoes, of cultures that live on, silently, inside the very heart of their conquerors. It makes you wonder, as you walk through the ruins of the Roman Forum today, how much of what you see is truly Roman, and how much is the silent, enduring echo of the world they tried to erase.
More stories they tried to erase.